Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Mind Blown Zone, episode 37. This one is called The Hidden Hand Drop from 2008. Here with me, Brad. How are you?
Never better as usual. And how about yourself?
Uh, well, a little under the weather today, if I'm to be honest.
Mm, gotcha.
But life goes on, right?
The sun's going to come up tomorrow.
Yeah, I can deal with a little stomach sickness.
Aha. Some anger somewhere in the background.
Most certainly.
Mm.
Once you notice the correlations between the emotional conflicts that you go through and the symptoms in your body, there's no turning back. You can see it every time.
Hey. Yes. A blessing and a curse.
Yeah. So I got a pretty wild bumper script to introduce this. You ready for it?
Lay it on us. Let's do this.
Okay. In 2008, a user appeared on the forum known as Above Top Secret, claiming to be a generational member of a ruling bloodline family. They said, as per the directives of the laws of our creator, a brief window of opportunity opens whereby a select handful of our family are required to make communication with our subjects and offer you the chance to ask us any questions you would like answered. Then they proceeded to offer alleged truths of this realm. Who rules us? Why we're here? The nature of gods, the story of creation, and much more. In this podcast, we will quote the highlights of this huge potential info drop known as the hidden hand drop from 2008. And we will discuss these quotes, examining the implications if they could be true. Up until now, most people have been instantly repelled by this information, though 2024 seems to be the time for this information to reach the masses. Ooh,
Spooky and excellent.
spooky.
Same time. Great.
So that last sentence, people have been repelled by this information. You just talk about it. I've brought it up at dinners, and people are like, I just felt the need that I need to go home now.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's, if I could briefly tell I guess you got personal stories next. We want to hit this next section here.
Yeah. Why don't you do this preface that is all about that approachability of the
Right.
topic?
So yeah, I've been thinking, we wrote this outline a week or 10 days ago, and I've just been thinking about it and actually had a few interesting discussions the last few days about it as well. And, came to the realization that this information, this material hasn't been really approachable for most people. And I've just been racking my brain as to why that is. Why was I so attracted to it? And why nobody else was. And I think back, you tell the story in the Take Your Power Back, piece, that the video we have on our website. So I'll just breeze over it really quick. But I had during the financial collapse of 2008, I had went through some pretty dark times then, because I knew something was wrong and we were being lied to, and I couldn't get anybody else around me to agree. And on the surface they were agreeing, but no one was interested in pursuing it as like I was. And I came to the realization that why this material became interesting to me almost instantly was that I'd reached this stage where I'd been down all the conspiracy theory rabbit holes, and I'd studied all the official mainstream information, and I knew I wasn't getting the answers I was looking for. And I'd also gotten those three guys in separate occasions that had told me that it was a good thing that the financial collapse was happening. Right? It was to benefit me somehow. And I just had this pause somewhere in the fall of 2008, where after laughing at the first guy, being angry at the second guy, and being just kind of dumbfounded by the third guy, I thought, if these guys are right, then I don't have any idea what's going on in this world. Like, totally don't know. And I think that was this moment that popped me open. And, it's kind of a surrender in a way, right? And for
Mhm.
me, the information just came pouring through as one revelatory idea after another. Whereas the people that I had approached about it, like I told Matt, I probably approached 50 people over the course of from then till now about this, and tried to explain it to them and told them it'd be well worth their while to read it. And, out of those 50 odd people, these last 16 years, the only person that read it was Matt. So I think part of that is too, I think Matt, I think you kind of had this your odyssey with, back pain and, pain and fibromyalgia in general. You had gone through all the healing modalities and experts and doctors that you could find, and you kind of reached that same stage, with that where you opened up to what you now teach, right?
Yeah. I mean, to comment on why I read it when you sent it to me was because for as long as I can remember, like even when I was just a little kid, I just felt like something ain't right here. Like people think that a certain thing is going on. Like people take things very literally, right? They're like, yes, this is this, we know this. People think they know all the metaphysics, they know how government should work, they know how what are the right ethics, and I'm like, there are so many contradictions in what all of these people who claim to know what's going on. Like there's so many contradictions and all that. And so I was always searching for, esoteric stuff to just try to understand what was going on. And I read so much stuff. Like I read everything by Ayn Rand. Imagine that. How insane do you have to be to read that? I read Nietzsche, read
Right.
Greek philosophers. I'd even tried to read Kant, just all sorts of like, all about Buddhism, listen to a whole body of Alan Watts. And I'm like, well, geez, man, still like, I don't know. And then when I met you, you told me about that German new medicine. And I was like, I read that whole body of work and I was like, yeah, this stuff is like the best health stuff I've ever read. This is the only stuff that I've ever read that even comes close to explaining health, even if it's not perfect. So when you later sent me the hidden hand stuff, I was like, well, I'll definitely read that. I mean, let's
Yeah,
do
you were
it. And
eager.
I just swallowed it in like a week and I was just reading it going, whoa, this is wild. Whoa, this is insane.
Right.
This is insane.
I remember being shocked when we talked. I think we talked like once a week back in the early days there, and we were talking about everything under the sun, and I just said, "Get a chance to take a look at that hidden hand stuff." And you go, "Yeah, I read it all." I'm like, "No, it's like 48 pages or something." Yeah, I'm like, "You didn't read it all already?" He goes, "Yeah, I read it all in like 2 sittings." And I was like, "Holy cow!" The first person ever. It was, and then of course other stuff happened after that. But that, again, that the reason I preface here just is because it's interesting that most people, everybody else that I talk to about this, just they found a reason to read the first page or two, or tell me it just didn't sound interesting, or they said they would read it, but months later I'd ask them and they say I haven't gotten around to it yet. So there's something repelling them, right? Something keeping them reading it. And I think this is the central idea, is that they had already had some belief system they were locked into, and that prevented them from
Yeah.
considering this.
Oh, yeah, because it is a complete replacement of, well, not
Every
necessarily a replacement, but it's like suggesting a completely different metaphysics, a completely different ethics, a completely different reason why we exist. A denial, it runs straight in the face of all science ever. So
right.
you got to be ready. You have to have that ability to uh not freak out about your present beliefs, right? And you have to be willing to just read something that flies in the face with of all beliefs you've ever had and not, have a tantrum about it.
Yep. And that's difficult. That's cognitive dissonance, and nobody likes to have their beliefs challenged. Totally
Right.
understood.
Like if someone listens to Tucker Carlson daily and is like, man, this guy tells it like it is. Like, not ready.
Well, and
Well,
in
maybe
fairness,
ready,
again,
but
you love
probably
to
not.
use Tucker. He's telling more truths than anybody else out there. If somebody's listening
Yeah,
to
I
Rachel
don't actually have
Maddow,
like a problem directly against Tucker, but he's just such a great example for like a, mainstream speaker that
yeah,
people are like, "Yep, that guy's telling me what's up."
he's the head honcho on soft disclosure right now. So I'm giving credit where credit's due. He's definitely being handled and reined in. But yeah, not anywhere near what Hidden Hand is saying.
No.
Not even close. So yeah, I guess I kind of told my personal story there a little bit. You know, breezing through that. Uh, it was, like I said, 2008, and I read it just, rapt attention. I was so new to the space and so shocked by what I was reading. I couldn't even ask questions. Like every day, So Hidden Hand would pop on. He'd say, I'm here for 3 days, is what he said. I'll answer all respectful questions, basically. And there would just be hundreds and hundreds of questions. In fact, if you go to the Above Top Secret board, you can still find the forum session with every question and comment that came through. And I just didn't know what to ask. I just knew that there were people in that thread that knew a lot more than I did, and they were asking good questions. So I just kind of sat back and basically revolved those 3 days. All I could do was keep refreshing Above Top Secret every 10 or 15 minutes to see when he was coming back. And pretty much blew me away. I'll leave it at that. It did. And at the
Well,
end, by the way, it leads to the raw material, which is what, that's the first channeled information that I read. So people said at the tail end of that, after he had gone, that they recognized the material and they thought he was, a follower of the raw material and so forth. So uh, that's where it was. And so I guess I left this last comment, I couldn't believe it was true. And yet it all was ringing true to me. So I was in a very heightened state of curiosity, to say the least. How about you?
right.
I guess you already
Um,
explained it.
yeah, pretty much put forward what I wanted to say. So I'd say we've teased it pretty good. We've prefaced it, and we did that for a reason because there's heavy, heavy stuff. So hopefully we bored a lot of people who were not ready for it. They just went, "Oh, this is boring," went away, and only the people who are like really ready to listen remain. Shall
Right.
I? The way we're gonna do this is, or I'm gonna read like quotes. All right, we've got about 6 sections that we identified as like the absolute juiciest part. I'm going to read the quotes, and then after I read, a quote, a section, Brad and I will discuss it. Ready to go, Brad?
Perfect. Let her rip.
All right, here we go. This first one is called "The Identity of the Dropper," the reason for the drop. Uh, I am a generational member of a ruling bloodline family. Every so often, as per the directives of the law of our Creator, a brief window of opportunity opens whereby a select handful of our family are required to make communication with our subjects and offer you the chance to ask us any questions you would like answered. I am double bound in this duty. It is required of me by the law of our Creator to offer this opportunity to you at this time, though I am also bound by the law of planetary free will and by family oaths, that there is only so much I'm able to say. Then someone asks, how many generations back does your bloodline extend? Or perhaps more accurately, who does your family consider its earliest ancestor in a position of power? Our lineage can be traced back beyond antiquity. From the earliest times of your recorded history and beyond, our family has been directing the play from behind the scenes in one way or another. Before the rise and fall of Atlantis, yes, that was indeed perfectly real. We are born to lead. It is part of the design for this current paradigm. Our realms of influence do not fit as comfortably into the three boxes of your triangle as you may imagine. There are 6 disciplines of training within the family, and each member of the family is schooled extensively in all of them from early childhood. We all have an area of specialty, though we have experience in all spheres. The 6 spheres of schools of learning are military, government, spiritual, scholarship, leadership, and sciences. In practice, out there on the stage of public life, we hold key positions in all of these main areas of importance. With the addition of a complicit media machine and ownership of your financial establishments, all bases are covered.
Imagine how many thousands of conspiracy theorists were going, yes, there it is. Yes.
It's true. Oh my God. It's this feeling that I had inside all my life. It's true.
Yeah, that's quite an opening. And something that should be mentioned too is that this was the third of 5 of these, bloodline Illuminati drops that I know of. It's 3 of them on the Above Top Secret board, and 2 of them are on another conspiracy theory board called Godlike Productions, or GLP. So this is kind of in the middle of all 5. This was the third one that I'm aware of, and
Mhm.
and by far offered the most disclosure and sanity and friendly discourse. So worth noting. Anyway, what'd you take away from that opening stanza?
Uh, well, the thing that first comes up, uh, surely is you're like, "What? Okay. Yeah. Okay. You want to prove that, mate?" right?
Right.
That's where you would first be, right? They come in with a huge claim and you're like, "Wow, that sounds all wonderful." Like, do you have any proof of that? So I'm able to like a lot of people I notice like when they reach that point, they're like, "Well, this is just there's no proof. I'm gonna stop reading." Right? But I like to take things like allegorically. Like Plato's allegory of the cave is like maybe there were or is it right? Just 1 second. He talks about this story and it's like maybe it was like that, but it has a metaphorical story, right? So when I was reading, it, I'm like, well, I don't really care if this is true or not at this stage. I just want to hear this stuff, right? I want to hear the metaphor. I want to imagine, even if it's just some nerd in their basement writing all this stuff, like they must have still had these really interesting thoughts that led them to there. So, maybe it's just metaphorical. So I'm
Mm,
willing to learn.
interesting. Yeah, for these well schooled and researched conspiracy therapists, they're theorist. I say therapist nowadays. This all. It's like, yeah, we already knew all this. You're not tell us something we don't know, right?
Right. Right.
Kind of where they were at this point. I see your perspective as well. So yeah, to me, the
Yeah.
thing that jumped out the most was how he said, we're born to lead. Right? And that's like that they're bred to be leaders. That struck me right out of the gate as something very interesting.
Yeah,
That
you
that's
kind
what
of
they
get this imagination of this like family, like with this ruling bloodline family, and who knows where they are, but these children are born, and from the very first moment they are trained in all these spheres and just reared for perfection, and then set upon the world with just every single piece of knowledge required to lead the masses. That's like
right,
whoa, like that just makes me go, man, imagine if it's like that.
right, and they withhold that information from us, right? So
Hmm.
all their research and information they've gathered over the centuries, right, is the good stuff, the juicy stuff is hidden from us, but they've got
Hmm.
it all.
Hmm. Right.
Cool.
We're
So
like
yeah, that. Go ahead.
kids just learning like the basic 3-year-old stuff that they might learn when we're adults.
All right. Yeah, yeah. Accelerated. Yeah, they're probably ready to go at 12 or 13. They're probably ready to lead a battalion at that point. Anyway, that's what
And
jumped out at me. Go ahead.
the first interesting clue is that they say, from the earliest times, like before antiquity, like imagine a bloodline that has lasted that long, the power that they would have.
Yeah. I think I mentioned this in a previous podcast, maybe not, but I often ask people, why do you think none of our like national, founders of America, why aren't any of their relatives in positions of power today? I mean, not, you know, not like all of them have to be, but the reality is that none of them had any of their offspring basically beyond, maybe 20, 30, 40 years after, when America was founded. You don't, there's no handoff to the, no nepotism, no lineage in America. All our great founders and leaders, their families have died off almost immediately.
Right. It's as if
Make
they
sure.
didn't have quite the top level of power.
Yeah, it's just kind of like that. Strange, huh? Even today, right? We don't have any of these Rockefellers running around who were
Hmm.
clearly in big time in charge, in the 20th century. And
Right.
there's not one to speak of today.
Hmm. And I think a lot of people do get the sense that there is like an Illuminati, right? Like a ruling group completely outside of our awareness. So clearly it's kind of leading into that idea. And then I guess the above top secret people were like, yeah, we've heard that before. But like, well,
Right.
you know, tell us something more, right? So shall we go into the next thing they say?
Yeah, and just quickly, I'm not so sure people are on board with the bloodline Illuminati idea yet. Maybe, but people are certainly buying into the deep state idea. They just
Hmm.
think it's just, but not in the way that Hidden suggesting. I think. Anyway, let's keep cruising.
Yeah, I do at least find like if someone really thought that Joe Biden like calls the shots, that would really make me laugh. Okay,
Most people do.
so The next topic here that they speak on, and remember, this is a long, lengthy drop of information, right? So we kind of like chose specific short areas that kind of get to the crux. So this is what we chose. This is kind of like on metaphysics. Okay, I'm gonna read that. They said, in the beginning, there is the infinite one. This is the source of all intelligent infinity. It is the undifferentiated absolute. Within it is unlimited potential waiting to become. Think of it as the uncarved block of your Taoists' traditions. Infinite intelligence, becoming aware of itself, seeks to experience itself, and the one infinite creator is born or manifest. This appears to your third density comprehension as space. In effect, the creator is a point of focused infinite consciousness or awareness into infinite intelligent energy. The one infinite creator, also becoming self aware, seeks to experience itself as creator, and in doing so, and in so doing, begins the next step down in the creational spiral. The one infinite creator, in focusing its infinite intelligence, becomes intelligent energy, which you could call the great central sun, and divides itself into smaller portions of itself that can then in turn experience themselves as creators or central suns. In other words, each central sun or creator is a step down in consciousness, in conscious awareness, or distortion from the original thought of creation. So, in the beginning was not the word, but thought. The word is thought expressed and made manifest as creator. There is unity. Unity is all there is. Infinite intelligence and infinite energy. The two are one. Within them is the potential for all creation. This state of consciousness could be termed as being. Infinite intelligence does not recognize its potential. It is the, it's a bit confusing how that's written, does not recognize it is potential or does not recognize its potential. What do you,
Yeah, it's just grammatical. Yeah,
just
I think
grammatically confusing.
its potential. Yeah, without the
Okay.
apostrophe.
Yeah. It is the undifferentiated absolute, but infinite energy recognizes the potential of becoming all things in order to bring any desired experience into being. Intelligent infinity can be likened to the central heartbeat of life, and infinite energy as the spiritual lifeblood or potential which pumps out for the creator to form the creation. All right.
Woo!
So tell us what that means, Brad.
Oh man, I mean that is that's a very precise, very brief, tight explanation which you can find. So this is in this is early in the drop that Hidden Hand starts to go down this path. A lot of the complainers are in here saying this sounds a lot like Helena Blavatsky, the Secret Doctrine and Theosophy, and other people are saying this sounds like Steiner and Theosophy. There's some raw material in there with the third density idea. So, very early on in this, people are saying this guy who's doing this, right, is just has been studying metaphysics for a long time, and he's combining ideas from all these different resources to put this piece together. That being said, I've never seen it written this way,
Mm.
and if you have enough, study and background in metaphysics, you can kind of see what's being said. It's not easy to see it. And I'm not saying I see it perfectly, but I see what he's trying to say. And if I were to write this, if I were to take all that 5 minutes that you read there, these 5 or 6 paragraphs, I have to stop, and I can see these spots where I'd have to stop and explain what that sentence means, right, in more detail without just jumping to the next point, because it's pretty thick with not making any sense. I don't know what was your take on it.
Well, let's start. I mean, he says that there's like the infinite one, the source of all, and then it seems that from it like is thought of something else, and then it created like small, like lesser or split off versions of itself or something to create some other experience, and then they're like suns or something, which is a little bit confusing. How would you explain that?
Well, yeah. So the metaphor I like to use, I mean, creator source, he's pointing to this notion of God, of course, and
Hmm.
the metaphor I like to use is imagine an ocean, right? And there are waves, and there's condensation, and there are droplets, and washing up on the beach, and then forming puddles, and all the rest, right? Where water is in different forms other than just in the middle of the ocean. And that's kind of the idea that's being expressed here, in my opinion, right? It's like the ocean is all of those things. It's the condensation, it's the puddles, it's the lagoons, it's the waves, it's the spray coming off the waves, and it's all right. All those separate ways of describing the ocean are still the ocean, and
Hmm.
those separate ways are just temporary, right? There's only a wave for whatever 5 seconds, and there's the spray when when it crashes for 2 seconds or whatever, right? And that's what I think Hidden Hand is essentially describing, right? It's still all it still is all part of the ocean and returns to the ocean. It just has this temporary moment where it seems like it's this separate, droplet of water spraying, for example. Make sense?
Hmm.
So that's
Sure.
the way that you read this, the way that we read it, we think in terms of linear time, past and future, and this idea that these and this is described in a lot of esoteric traditions. Rudolf Steiner describes it in such excruciating detail that almost nobody in the world could describe it back to you. But he goes into detail about what he calls the creator beings that are the step downs from the creator source. And he talks about angeloi and archangeloi and angels and archangels and Elohim and seraphim, and it just steps right on down this list all the way down to rocks, which are in raw speak, those are first density 1D entities, still living entities in terms of consciousness, but that would be the bottom end. And I think arc angeloi is what the top end, but no, there's no point even beginning to explain any of that. I don't think that I totally understand what
Hmm.
Steiner's talking about, but that's the same idea. That making a little bit of sense?
Yeah, and it seems to point to some sort of hierarchy almost.
Very much. Right. And I
Hmm.
think you can think of that. You can kind of extrapolate that into this idea of dimensions. And when most people think of dimensions, they think of like something somewhere else. And that's the wrong way to think about dimensions. All the dimensions are everywhere all the time, right here and right now. It's just our ability to perceive or sense them that's lacking.
Hmm.
So, in a
And
way,
then we're in we're what are we, third density creator beings? Is that the idea?
yep, yep, third density, but we're the first density to have the ability to create uh, in the way
Hmm.
that we do. And technically speaking, in 2024, right now, our consciousness is now fourth density. Or, I'm sorry, fourth dimension. Um, if all the new age and channel materials are to be believed, and I do believe them, um, it gets a little confusing to talk between dimensions and densities, but you can just think of it as the higher the density, the more light that's being permeating that density. So if you think about rocks in a cave or whatever as being the least amount of light, dark cave deep underground, kind of like that. And then as you get closer and closer to the sun, if you will, then there's more light. So that's kind of the way this works. And that's the suggestion. What's happening now is that more light is permeating our realm right now. And if you listen to my COVID podcast, I talked a little bit about how that affected us health wise. Is that making some sense?
Okay, yes. And I guess the second half is kind of about like he's like, in the beginning was not the word, there was thought, and the word is thought expressed and made
Expressed.
manifest.
That's
And it
right.
seems to mean that like, the word, right? That's like solid, sound, physical, actual stuff, right? It seems to imply that everything. that has become stuff that we can interact with is like was once the idea of some higher level creator being
Right.
or
And that's
just of the one creator being or something. Is that the idea?
that's it. Yep. You can go to Walter Russell or Nikola Tesla on this, right? Tesla says that, that both of them agree that the realm we're in, we're swimming in the ether, just like a fish is swimming in the water, right? Lake or ocean or whatever. We're actually swimming in our own ocean called the ether. And Tesla is famous for saying that light is but a sound wave in the ether. So that's this disturbance in the ether, right? That creates a sound, or when we say a word, it ripples the ether, right? That makes sense.
Hmm.
So that's where Hidden Hand is pointing here, is that the power of our words, right? They bring things into form more so than thoughts.
Hmm. It seems that the word originates from the thought, though. Is that what he
Yeah.
says? Okay.
Yes. Always. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
The word is right. Okay.
The
Shall we go
thought.
to the next part?
Yeah. The thought's fourth density, the astral realm, right, where our
Oh,
thoughts
okay.
are bubbling about,
Uh,
and then we bring it, enliven it here in the third density with speech words.
oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Makes some sense. Okay.
Cool.
I'm just gonna preface this next part. This next part is like, hold on to your chair. Like,
Yeah.
don't blame me. Like, I didn't
Take a
do it.
pause.
Like, yeah, just breathe. Okay. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, this is hard for people to believe. This is going to be a hard
don't
section. So,
blame
but we
Matt
got to do it.
Cook. Like, okay.
Don't ask me to explain it
So
all.
the next part is called Lucifer's social memory complex. He says, let us get to the crux of the matter. Your creator, the one you have called Yahweh, is not God inasmuch as your Bible refers to him as being the one true God. He is a creator or sub logos rather than the one infinite creator. He is not even a galactic level logos, but rather is the planetary logos for this one planet. Our creator, hold on to your chair. Our creator is the one you refer to as Lucifer, the light bearer and light and bright and morning star. Our creator is not the devil, as he has been spuriously portrayed in your Bible. Lucifer is what you would call a group soul or a social memory complex, which has evolved to the level of sixth density, which in effect means that he, or more accurately, we, has evolved to a level sufficient that we, has attained a status equal or arguably greater than that of Yahweh. We have evolved higher than him. In appearance, were you to gaze upon Lucifer's fullest expression of our being, the appearance would be that of a sun or a bright star. Or when stepping down into a third density vibration, we would appear as what you may term an angel or light being. All right, Brad, what do you
Bang.
think of that part?
Well, it matches up with what a lot of people believe, just in different ways, right? Coming at it from different angles. But certainly you've heard many Christians say this is Satan's realm or this is Lucifer's realm, right? This temporary life on Earth, and they're not entirely wrong about that. Um, what they're wrong about is that I got to get out of here and I shouldn't be here and this isn't home and that kind of a thing. Yeah, everybody's right where they should be. Um, but yeah, this idea, and people point out all the time that there is no correlation between Lucifer and Satan devil, right? This is kind of a loose association that's been made by people. And of course, the popular idea is that Lucifer defied God in some way, which really doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But that's the popular notion. And if you follow what Hidden Hand is saying here, it starts to make a lot of sense because we have this deep state slash Illuminati slash cabal, whatever you want to call it, that seem to be in control of everything. And it seems to be out of the awareness of 99% of the population. Nobody seems to be able to see it or recognize it. So that would suggest to me, and I say this often to people, is that one of the reasons we're in the position we're in is because we don't know how things work. And what Hidden Hand is suggesting here, and which I'm in total agreement with, is this group knows how everything works perfectly, and they're not letting us in on it. So
Hmm.
that's my take on this section. How about you?
Well, let me ask this question. So, they've got to talk about the social memory complex, like group soul kind of thing.
Mhm.
It seems to indicate that this seems to be what they're saying is this ruling bloodline family, the beings in that family are like souls of Lucifer. Is that what you
Yes,
take as well?
yes, and everybody else are souls of Yahweh.
Right.
That's right. That's right. So two separate consciousnesses. I don't know whether you could go as far as saying two different species. I think a lot of people would like to say that, but certainly appearance-wise, you can't tell the difference.
Okay.
But there's a long history of bloodline superiority going back millennia, and I think this is it. There's a lot of talk about only people inside the family can really be, can learn all these things. So they have to be part of the quote bloodline.
Hmm.
And that's how Nan introduced himself, right? Or herself. You never know, male or female. But yeah, that's the idea. They have a different state of consciousness, a different level. He says it here that theirs is superior, not in better or worse, but just understanding or knowing more,
Hmm. Yeah,
right?
it's an interesting kind of thing here that it's really making this big claim. It's like there's Yahweh and there's us, and we're greater. We're equal or greater. That's like, whoa, yikes. I mean, to traditional Christianity, that's like blasphemy, big time,
Yeah,
right?
in a way, absolutely. We
That's why I
told you
said
this
hold
was
on
going
to
to
your
be
chair.
shocking. Exactly. Anyway,
So
that's
then
good. I
the
think,
next part goes pretty intense too, right?
yeah, hit us.
Okay, the next part is this concept catalyst, CATALYST. Or he or she says, we were assigned a challenging task by the Council of Elders, who act as the guardians of this galaxy from their eighth density headquarters on the planet Saturn. Yahweh, due to the fact that he had not, as was his right as planetary logos, handed down his own free will to know thyself to those incarnating upon his planet, was having very little evolutionary progress therein. So we, Lucifer, were sent to help. Once the order was given from the Council of Elders, we fell or descended back to a place where we could, with hard work and focus, once again materialize a third density manifestation of ourself. Yahweh had agreed to our coming. In fact, it was he who initially asked the council for a catalyst of change to enter into his creation and share the knowledge and wisdom we had attained through our ascensions. In the absence of free will upon the planet, there can be no polarity and therefore nothing to choose between. Just as is portrayed in the book of Genesis, the planet was very Edenic in nature. Sure, it was a lovely paradise, yet the beings incarnating there had no agitator toward evolving beyond the third density, and therefore little hope of ever making the journey home to the one. Yahweh has been happy to keep his own little pet Eden project in effect, but with little chance of the souls here making it home. It had become, in effect, an albeit very beautiful prison. Yahweh was, in modern parlance, running a benign dictatorship. Without polarity, derived from free will, there is only the unity of love and light and no choice to experience other than that. So we were to be the catalyst for change in order to provide that choice, thus bringing polarity. Yahweh agreed that we would introduce the concept of free will to Earth's inhabitants by offering them an initial choice as to whether they wanted it or not. Hence, the tree of knowledge of good and evil, or more accurately, the tree of polarity, positive and negative. Whoa. Yahweh takes his inhabitants to a new garden and tells them, you can do anything you like except this one thing, thus creating the desire to do the one thing they are told they cannot, hence a choice. We provide the catalyst by telling them the benefits of attaining knowledge. They eat from the tree, and the rest is history.
Yowza.
Yeah,
That's some heavy stuff. And
right.
I think in this section he's taking a few liberties with the common story and the metaphor. I'm not going to go where I kind of have a little bit of disagreement with him, but that's the general idea. If this can be summed up, is the way I like to phrase it is in before the Luciferians showed up, everybody was just sitting around eating grapes, having orgies, splashing in the ocean, playing games, and they were just doing this lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. In other words, there wasn't even the concept that you should change things, and that version of humanity had forgotten who they were and had no drive to remember who they were. And that was the problem that Hidden Hand is suggesting here. And you'll find this type of idea shared with other, metaphysical teachers like Blavatsky and Steiner, for example. So that's the idea. Is what Hidden Hand is saying here is someone had to come down and play the opposite role of beauty, love, light, kindness, charity, gratitude. And so the Luciferians brought the opposing pole: evil, darkness, fear, anger, and all the rest. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's what he's saying. For a purpose, right? There was a purpose that's not to wreak havoc and run roughshod over everybody and, forever dominate the lesser, lower consciousness species. The idea was eventually we would snap out of it and start to focus on our spiritual and metaphysical health. That was the idea.
Mm-hmm.
The suggestion from a lot of the channels and metaphysical teachers over the centuries is that it didn't go as planned. And we became more and more dominated by this group over the centuries and until we got to this point, which is a change in how the game is played. We've been in that since 2012, if we're to believe what the modern channeled material is saying. And they are ceding their power back to us.
Mm-hmm. So you're saying that Lucifer is going home or something?
According to the channels, Lucifer is gone.
Gone.
Gone. Spiritually influencing things. And the highest members are also no longer here. But the minions and the humans that were raised in that world are still here, and they are still holding positions of power and authority. And they're the ones causing the difficulties that we see today.
Mm-hmm.
That's what
I
all
mean,
the
if
channels I listen to are suggesting. Yeah,
to imagine what that would actually be like would be like that we have like, I don't know, high power level regular people. Like I don't know, Trump or Joe Biden or people up there or something like that, maybe even higher.
they're
And they at
handlers.
one
Yeah,
point, yeah, they're handlers or something, and they were at one point they're getting on the telephone to, you know, one link in the chain who would get into a telephone call with another link in the chain who would eventually talk to these Lucifer beings and get the instructions of what to do. And then
right,
one day Lucifer went home and those people disappeared. And it's like they call up and there's no one there. And it's like, oh, I haven't heard from those people for a while.
right.
And
Yeah,
now they're like, what do we do?
that's
That is that the picture that's been painted here?
yeah, that's exactly right. Yep. Right. They still hold the levers so they can do stuff, right? But they're not coordinated anymore, and that's just what they do doesn't hold together, and none of their things seem to stick, right? Since COVID, right? Like nothing's sticking for them any longer.
It was like
And
COVID was like the last thing.
right, if these beings would be here, we'd all be locked down, travel passports. I wouldn't be in Hawaii. You probably wouldn't be bouncing around continents. We'd be in a state of, a prison planet, to use Alex Jones' word. They
Mhm.
would have they would have never let us get back to anywhere near where we were in 2019 if they were in full control.
So he refers to some sort of purpose here, like to ascend back to like eighth density, as if like we, you know, by however this hierarchical creation happens, and then we ended up as these third density stuff. We're supposed to like remember who we are and like ascend back to eighth density or something, having had this experience and learning or something. And apparently we got stuck or like forgot completely, and we're making no progress back to there. And the only way for the progress to recommence was for this Lucifer god soul complex to come down and be like, stir up some trouble or something and get us to wake up.
Yep, snap us out of it. Yeah, and there's 12 densities to be precise. So
Yikes.
that's the cycle of creation. First, you go started first, and you move your way towards 12th.
Right. I must be pretty good up at 12.
Yeah, but it's all
So
predictable. No roller coaster rides at 12.
sometimes I wouldn't mind getting off the roller coaster there for just for a little while.
Yeah. When it's not going well, that's when we want to get off. When it's going well, we love it, right?
Okay, I'll read the next part. This part is called We Love You. Understand that we have to be negative. That's what we were sent here to be. It is our contract, and it has always been to help you by providing the catalyst I spoke of earlier. Being negative is very hard for us, not on a physical level. The characters we play enjoy our roles as we're programmed that way, but on a spiritual level, it's hard. We surpassed the lowly negative vibrations eons ago. We are light and we are love. It is a very hard thing for us to do spiritually to create all this negativity, but we do it because we love you. And it is for your highest good, ultimately. You could say that it is our sacrifice that we have made in order to be of service to the one infinite creator and to you, our brothers and sisters in the one.
Yeah, I don't remember an answer igniting more incendiary anger than this one. But yeah, the question that led up to this was, why do you kill us and torture us and rape us and steal from us and subjugate us and all the rest? And this was the answer that Hidden Hand gave, and it fired up a lot of people, as you would expect, right? Why do you kill us and murder us and hurt us? Because we love you. Can't you
Mhm.
see? Right. So this was the probably the hardest one to take, but it was also one of those moments where it kind of knocked me back in my seat and said, "Whoa, could this be right?" Right. This was what we said in the opening, right? Like it didn't seem true, but it rang of some truth deep down,
Mhm.
which
I
kept me
mean, you
reading.
do reflect, like people say, it's through our tough experiences that we learn to become who we really are, right? You hear people say that.
That's right. And we often look back at the worst times of our life and see, well, this I didn't enjoy going through this situation, but looking back, I never would it wouldn't have led me to this and this and this, and I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for that situation. So you can squeeze out some truth to it if you are able to look at it from a higher perspective.
Hmm. Do you think there's more to say on this one, or should we just go on to the next one?
I think that's enough, unless you have something else you want to add. I mean, you got to sit
Well,
with it, man.
one one
You
thing
just
I
don't.
could one thing I could say is like it points to that there is ultimately only love. Like if Yahweh's love is if Lucifer is love, then what? There's only love, and everything is love,
That's what they say,
right? And then that makes you ask, well, wait, what is love?
and no one can give you an answer to that one.
Hmm.
Unanswerable question. We know it when we feel it. That's about the best answer you'll ever hear.
I think a lot of people have this metaphysics where they're like, I live in a cruel universe. There's viruses trying to get me. There's parasites trying to get me. Government's trying to get me. Everything's like I'm in this like protective skin barrier with like weapons and the will of my mind to like protect me from this like cruel world, right? And this seems to say no, there is no cruel world.
It's yeah. You've had a year or so to let this gestate a little bit. You're pointing at it, but yeah, it's a hard thing to come around to.
2 years, I think.
Yeah, has it been two? So yeah, it's take some time, which is why I don't want to spend much more time on this. I mean, you've got some deeper insights into it, but I think it's enough just for people to. I know I was shocked when I read it, and it took me quite a while to gestate on it and let it settle
Okie
in.
dokie.
So I'm going to leave it there.
Okay, next, why you are here. Hold on to your chairs. You and your creator are one. Get back up off the floor. Sit on your chair again. As to your statement on your total freedom, you are not responsible for those around you. You and they are all one, too. When seen from a higher density, no, I'm sorry, I'll say that sentence again. You and they are all one, too, when seen from a higher density. But in this density, you are here to work upon yourself. You are here to remember who you are and why you are here. You are here to remember the infinite creator, to know your creator within you, and to offer your service to him and others of your own free will choice to serve. The one comes before the other. When you remember who you are and you know it deep within the core of your being, you will know and recognize your invisible connection to all that is, and in so doing, joy and thanksgiving and service will be the natural outpouring result from your grateful heart. When you work upon yourself, you learn to know the Creator within you. Being of service to others will be natural for you, and your glorious harvest shall await. There's a question here. One thing I don't get from a foreign member. One thing I don't get, and perhaps you can explain this to me, Hidden Hand, is why those who belong to Lucifer and Lucifer himself do not fight for the freedom of all souls. If Lucifer represents liberty, freedom of will, and knowledge, why do those who serve him not do as the biblical Lucifer did and rebel against the tyranny of the elders? To which Hidden Hand replies, this is a very good question. Thank you. I'll split it into two parts and answer the second part after this. Firstly, the Council of Elders are the absolute opposite of tyrannical. They are wise and loving guardians of our galaxy. There is so much that one cannot understand from only a third density perspective. When you reach higher densities, you see that ultimately everything balances and there is only unity. All else, then unity is illusion or thought form.
Woo, man, that's some heavy stuff. Yeah. This is, I mean, what's being shared here is what you'll learn across any major spiritual or metaphysical tradition that you study, right? Deeper than the surface exoteric studies, but when you get into the deeper stuff, this is they're all pointing to this. This isn't unique to Hidden Hand. He's saying what all others are saying, and it just goes against our cultural societal brainwashing, right? In every way, it's almost like we've almost been taught the exact opposite of what's being suggested here. Yeah.
Yes, I would call it the exact opposite.
Right. 180 degrees. So, there's just one shock after another for someone who's reading this for the first time or listening for the first time. The point, I think, the questioner and the point that, maybe isn't made perfectly clear in this exchange is that the idea that Hidden Hand is trying to get across here is that the bad guys, however you want to label them in society, are here. Two reasons. One, because we think they're here, but two, it is to balance out the polarity of this realm called duality and keep an even Steven with the good and the bad. And somebody had to be the bad guys in order to have this experience. And effectively, that's what Hidden Hand is saying his social memory complex is here to do. What do you think?
Heavy. I have no
Right?
idea what I think of that. At that level of suggestion, I'm like, okay.
It's the roller coaster ride, right? It's something different than the unity that Hidden Hand points to.
Very much touching, like, really goes all in on the one creator that everyone is everyone else and everyone is one.
Right.
All
Yep.
else than unity is illusion or thought form.
That's right.
You know, it's interesting how we call this thing the universe.
Right.
And it's also interesting how the word you is what you call people, right? It's all you.
Right. I dropped this one on you the other day, I think. And after you die, you're supposed to have the atonement or the at one ment.
Yeah, that was a good one.
There's the word alone or all one, kind of. So there's
All one.
allusions to
Okay.
it all over the place, which is interesting. Let's keep it cruising here. I think we're pushing up on an hour and we got a ways to go.
Okay. Okay, here we go. So this is the last one, really. And then we'll just got some little content at the end. Tree of Knowledge Alternative. Our initial contract was to introduce the catalyst for free will on this planet. When Yahweh initially began discourse with the Council of Elders, he was not initially looking for help with introducing free will, but rather for guidance on how he could best speed up his and his inhabitants' evolutionary process. As I mentioned, he was running a benign dictatorship. We had at that time just completed an assignment in Tau Ceti and had reported for our next duties. We, as Group Soul Lucifer, were sent on a fact finding expedition, as it were, to visit Earth and meet with Yahweh, to evaluate his planetary creation laws and make suggestions on how best he could help his offspring. This is the term I shall use to describe the souls who comprise the group soul, and thusly Yahweh, to progress. We explored many options and reported our findings to the Council and to Yahweh. It was our best evaluation that the only real and fast track way to increase his evolvement meaningfully was the introduction of free will. It was not specifically the implementation of free will that Yahweh wanted help with, it was simply the introduction of a catalyst. He was not at all pleased with our reports that he needed to implement free will. He was happy with his little pet paradise and he didn't want to lose control of it. In the end, the council persuaded him that it was the best way and he reluctantly agreed. We returned to Earth and had a cordial meeting with Yahweh, discussing how we could best implement the free will option. Yahweh was adamant that his offspring would choose to be loyal to him anyway, and that they were so contented with their way of life that they would always trust him and do as he said was best. That he said was the That, he said, was the main reason that free will would not work well as the catalyst. That's why he agreed to the experiment of the Tree of Knowledge. He believed it would prove him right. When it did not, he became angry, threw his toys out of the pram and his offspring out of the garden, and laid a big guilt trip on them about how they had broken his trust and disobeyed him. That's not really an honorable way for a Logos to behave, but hey, that's the beauty of free will, I guess. Next problem to occur was that his offspring were so grateful to us for our help that Yahweh became, in his own admission, a jealous God. Then we had the whole "you shall have no other gods than me" thing. We were not pleased with the situation at all, as a Logos should not be behaving like this with his offspring. They are one after all. When we attempted to leave the planet to return to the castle, Yahweh prevented our departure. We tried to leave again and were then thrown down into the astral planes and confined therein. The council ordered us to be released, but said we would have to cancel our contract to help the souls on Earth to evolve. We didn't want to leave. We found them very likable beings, really positively polarized, and we wanted to stay and help. We just wanted also to be free to come home and go as we pleased. to come and go as we pleased. The only way we could stay was to stay confined as a group soul, which meant cycles of incarnation for us as individuated souls, which we had not done for a long while.
Mhm.
How
Reincarnation.
about that?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this section, I don't know that I'm in total harmony with some of the things that he says here. Um, Seems a little out of bounds to me. It always has. So I'm not gonna comment uh, extensively here on this. But yeah, there is some of this talk of this back and forth and push and pull, and you can find a little bit of this in the Steiner material as well. And it's I don't know. I'm going to leave this one open to everyone's own personal opinion and not offer any analysis. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, this part here, I could barely even remember that very last paragraph. That's like, whoa, okay,
Yeah.
that's a tough one.
In fairness, there were parts of this. Did we get to the? Yeah, I was going to say, if we get to the well poisoning, it's the next section. So it leads into the conclusion very nicely. Why don't we just
Mhm.
jump there?
Yeah, so we do
And
encourage you to check this out, although we suggest that it's a possibility that a thing called poisoning the well has occurred. I'm going to define that for you. Poisoning the well in the context of information dissemination and strategy is a tactic that involves the deliberate inclusion of false or misleading information along with truthful insights or secrets. The false information discredits the overall content, leading skeptics or uninformed individuals to dismiss everything, including the valid information as untrue or unreliable. Can be used strategically in various scenarios where the intent is to protect sensitive information by undermining the credibility of the entire release. This makes it easier for those who might be overwhelmed, unprepared, or skeptical to reject the entire set of information based on the inaccuracies presented, thus safeguarding the deeper truths or more sensitive elements from wide scrutiny or belief. And this is something that's also in the Q material that was dropped. It's the wells poisoned. So there's false predictions in this. He says the stock markets will soon complete their controlled demolition. Remember, this was 2008. Our financial institutions will later call in all loans, new currency by the end of 2008, early 2009, along with a new Union of Nations. January has been spoken of in some circles as the latest. San Francisco and Damascus will be uninhabitable by the end of 2010. Okay, so there's like there's predictions that completely didn't come true. So maybe it means that he was just off his rocker and it's completely all made up, or maybe the well's poisoned. So I don't have an answer on that.
oh, I have no doubt that that's what was done. I mean, it was so some of those predictions were so close to when he put the information out, right? It would have
Mhm,
been much easier for him to say this is going to happen in 2020 or 2030 or 2040, right? And for him to say
mhm,
08, 09, 2010 was deliberate. And that section, that last section that you read, also smells of a little bit of poisoning the well.
mhm.
And I think that it's done for exactly this reason. So if you can find, if someone who this information isn't resonating with, it's an easy out for them to say, well, obviously this isn't true and
Yeah,
that isn't true and this isn't true. Therefore, I can dismiss the whole shebang. And so it's kind
right,
of a safety net for people who aren't ready for this. So
right.
strategic, it's smart, and I think Hidden Hand understood human psychology better than all our greatest known psychologists combined times 1,000. And that's why he did this.
Yeah, and to mention the Q material again, I mean, Q material came out and said that Hillary Clinton was going to be arrested in 1 month or something like that. So it
Right.
was like immediately discredited. But if you look deeper into the material and didn't mind about that, there was so much truth there.
That was actually the first Q drop, ironically enough.
Right.
Oh, good. Yeah, no, good point. So yeah, it's
So we're gonna.
go ahead.
I'll just mention quickly, Brad. We're gonna put the links to one big summary of it, and we're gonna put the link also to the original forum post on Above Top Secret in descriptions. Go ahead, Brad.
No, perfect. No, that's where I was going. Keep going.
Did you want to mention the deep dive that we're gonna do on this?
Yeah, so I think we're going to start offering. We talked about this way in the early part podcasts, and I think we're going to start doing this now. At least we're going to start now with a once a month what we're going to call a deep dive, and that's going to be subscription based. We're going to do that on, I think, Patreon, or I can't remember where we're going to do that. There'll be information below. But that's going to be basically, at least one, perhaps two videos per month. We're going to take a deeper dive into subject matter that maybe the general public isn't fully ready for yet. But those of you who this is really resonating with and want a deeper taste and get down and dirty with the information that we're not sharing publicly, this is going to be for you. And that's going to be what did we say? It's going to be $9.99 a month, right, for this deep dive subscription.
Yeah, at least at this point, that's the price we had in mind. Yeah.
So yeah, that'll be it. So that'll be below the video, and I think our first deep dive is we're going to go much deeper into this hidden hand drop. We kind of brushed the highlights. There's a lot more juicy stuff in there, and we encourage everybody to go check it out for themselves. We'll just be offering analysis and comparative materials to it in the deep dive. And I think it'll probably be closer. The deep dives will probably be closer to 2 hour videos.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's kind of like if you buy into this stuff and you're like, well, that sounds interesting. Like the next stuff that we're gonna look at in the deep dive is like there's a lot of like advice on living a better life and developing in there. I'd say we'll be touching on that stuff really heavily.
Right.
So if you're just someone
Big
who
time.
likes that evolution and growth and development, this would be totally up your alley.
Right. And my 5 stages of awakening, right? I go receptivity, contemplation, assimilation, integration, embodiment. And so we're going to jump past receptivity and contemplation. So we'll be in the deep dives, we'll be in the assimilation and integration mode at that point. People have already accepted a lot of this. So that's the idea with the deep dives.
Cool. Well, you happy to get that one off your chest, Brad?
Oh
You've been
yeah,
sitting on that a while.
I think when Matt suggested we do a podcast, I said, "Do you think we could ever do the hidden hand material?" And Matt said, "Someday." Here we are. It has arrived.
So someday does arrive. It's not
What
just
a shot!
someday. Someday it comes.
Right. Awesome. That was fun. Really enjoyed it. Looking
Yeah.
forward to the comments and questions from the viewers. And again, I encourage everybody to go read it themselves. We
Mhm.
touched 5% of it maybe in this podcast, so there's a lot more there for the curious.
Alrighty then. Well, thanks, Brad, for your elucidation of this material. Wonderful.
And thank you for your putting it together and all your good questions and comments as well. And thanks everybody for listening and sitting through it. And if you're still, if your jaw hasn't dropped or you're still in your seat, then by all means, let's keep digging. We look forward to seeing you in the deep dives.
Alrighty. Thanks, Brad. Thanks, everyone. See you next time.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks everybody. Bye bye.